Today for up to $2,500 at Check Into Cash.
You drive home with the cash in your pocket.
Visit Check Into Cash for an auto title loan today or get a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH. Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Where'd the old town go? They moved it all north of here in a shopping mall.
Good morning and welcome to Old Town Cleveland here on WOOP FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.woopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. Good morning, Debbie Moore. Tell me what's going on.
Let's see if I can get the month right this time.
It's April, Deb.
On Make It Grow, I welcomed everybody to the February 18th show. This morning is...
Then she said it was March.
Then I said it was March, and the poor lady sitting beside me said, it's April. Good morning. It's April the 18th, 2015, and we're going to have a really fun show this morning. We have three folks with us from the L&N Railroad in Etowah. They're going to be talking about the 125th anniversary and some exciting things that's going on up there. And we have with us Linda and Jim Caldwell and Sandy Brewer, and we'll be talking about their activities up there. I wanted to remind everybody that the Antique Car Show and Quilt Show is today, starting at 9 o'clock at the Bradley Square Mall. That's sponsored by our friends at Cherokee Valley Antique Car Show. And also, Point Park atop Lookout Mountain usually charges, I believe, about $3 a person to get in and look at the battlegrounds there. And all of those activities are free this weekend as part of the promotion for the National Park Service. And so they will also have guided tours of the battlefield from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. both days, Saturday and Sunday. You just catch up with the group there at the gates, and we'd like for everybody to go out and see Point Park. It might be a little soggy this morning.
Well, it might be the battle above the clouds might be really true today, Money. That
I'd say you wouldn't be able to see downtown Chattanooga from there this morning. Also, the Charleston Calhoun Hiwassee Historical Society will be having their monthly meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. at the Heritage Center across from the old football field up in Charleston. And Laura Bryan Spann will be their guest speaker. And she is going to tell everybody how to investigate old photos from communities that you're familiar with to figure out who those folks might be. And Laura is a fabulous researcher and speaker, and I suggest that everybody go out to see that.
And
3 p.m.
And the Etowah Moonshine Festival is coming. When is that? Does anybody know? It's
soon.
June?
No, soon.
So sooner than June. I thought it was first week of June.
I will find out.
But yeah, that's coming up too.
I think it's next weekend. But
it may be next weekend.
Well, I do know this. The date has absolutely slipped my mind, but I can tell you that they have 4 or 5 master moonshiners coming.
Yes,
Tom
they do.
Tom's coming.
Tom.
Okay.
If you've ever watched the Moonshiners.
June 12th and 13th at Roy Grooms, Jim Tom, Mark and Digger, and Steve Brown are going to be there. Hey, that's some big name band.
Well,
name people. Steve Brown and the band, and listen to bluegrass music and hang out. Tickets are $10 at the gate, and that's going to be the middle of June 12 and 13. And the 12th's actually a Friday.
All right, so for Friday and a Saturday, so maybe I'll get to go on one of those.
Tell me about the little place in Etowah that's selling them.
Dixie Queen
Thank
stills?
you.
Yeah.
What's going on with Dixie, and where is it compare? Is it there on the main strip in Etowah?
It's on Tennessee Avenue, which is the same as 411 Highway.
Mm-hmm.
It's right. In fact, she had a small storefront, and she's had to move to a little bigger place.
Mm-hmm.
But she's been really good about demonstrating for different things. She came over and demonstrated before some train passengers one day, just set up a small still just to show them how it worked.
Huh. We will have to invite them to come in and at least do a portion of a show.
And make some.
Make some.
Yeah, make a little moonshine here, that. So I don't know if that's legal, if Joe Guy's listening, or
well,
in our
so,
case, if Eric Watson's listening down here.
But P-Dab has an old steel, and he says when he takes it places, he can't put it together. Is that the...
I think that's true.
Sandy, getting
I think that's true. I have a friend that made one for his son for a science project. And when they got to display it, they couldn't put it together.
Yeah, he said it can't be touching like it would actually operate, but you can sell the parts to make one. I guess you can say they're parts for most anything.
There's some guys around town don't know that rule.
That's probably
and
but it's legal to make a certain amount of it. I think
I'd be really careful.
I think beer. I don't know about moonshine.
Personal consumption.
Oh.
Well, some of
Well,
our
I
friends
don't
can
know.
consume quite a bit.
They can drink a whole bunch, can't they?
So, Linda, tell everybody about your career and tell them when you retired and what you've been doing since you retired.
Oh, career. Oh, okay. Well, I retired.
She said career. I had a job.
I had a job. I worked for about 22 years for the Tennessee Overhill Heritage Association. That's a cultural tourism nonprofit that covered McMinn, Monroe, and Polk counties. But our office was based in Etowah at the depot. And one of the things that occurred while I was working there, and Sandy Brewer, who's with us here today, was a treasurer when that occurred, is we ended up purchasing the Old Line Railroad thanks to Glen Springs Holding, the corporation.
Okay. I was wondering how that. I mean,
well,
I was kind of wondering how y'all ended up with the railroad.
We kind of wondered the same thing. I was actually sitting in the airport at Dallas when they called me from the development district and asked me if there was any chance we could own it temporarily. Turned out we continued to own it, but Sandy was our treasurer. We knew we'd have to take this to our board of directors. So I called her at home and I said, are you sitting down? They want us to own this for a while. And I said, so what do you think we should do? And Sandy said, when you're faced with two choices, always take the bolder move. I vote yes. But we had a really good board of directors, and we did a roll call vote because it was a big decision, and it was unanimous to take it. What we didn't know when we took it was that we were going to end up owning it on and on, which means we also have that debt, that mortgage. But Glen Springs Holding has been a wonderful company.
So how much does one
with.
have to pay to own a railroad?
We paid $1.6 million for
More
that
than
one.
Monopoly, yeah. Yeah, a Monopoly Railroad. That's kind of hard to lay down and go to sleep at night when you sign a mortgage like that.
Well, that's the reason I look the way I look.
You're just like,
So now, did you get the trains with it too, or is that just the track?
No, and I'll tell you a true story about that. We just got a track, and then we had to figure out. We immediately had a major flood on the line.
of course.
Knocked out 20, 30 culverts, just a real mess, and no operator, no maintenance people, no nothing. Fortunately, Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, needed to get to their powerhouse. And so, thanks to our development district, they convinced them that, and rather than try to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars hoping they could get a road through the national forest, that they would go ahead and spend $200,000 and fix the first 13 miles of the railroad up to Appalachia Powerhouse. So, once we got the first 13 miles completed, restored, we were able to offer passenger trains on a portion of the line, and we have an ongoing operating agreement with Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum down in Chattanooga. They provide equipment and maintenance, but I will tell you that I had a very dear friend who's not with us anymore, Fleabite Johnson. And Fleabite was a house painter and did a little booking on the side, and one of the finest people I ever knew. And I always thought he was funny because he had such an unusual take on anything going on in the world. I used to just call him, and say things like, what do you think about opening up trade with China, and stuff like that. But so I called him when we got the track. And I said, Fleabite, did you hear we got the railroad? He said, yeah, I did. He said, that's good. I said, well, Fleabite, in your opinion, what do you think we should do first? He said, well, you got a town full of railroaders. I say you just start running trains. I said, well, there's a little bit of a problem. I said, we don't actually have a train. And he got real quiet. He said, you ain't got no train? I said, no, Fleabite, it didn't come with a train. We didn't get a train. He said, you've bought the track and you ain't got no train. I said, that's right. He said, well, I have always liked you. I think a lot of you, but this is by far the most ignorant thing you have ever done.
Coming from a person named Fleabite.
And you felt better about yourself automatically, right?
Automatically.
Yeah. Boy, I'm in real trouble.
That you have ever done.
So now, how the track?
So wait a minute. How did you finally get a train?
Well, we just kept talking to Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. We actually approached the company in North Carolina that has Smoky Mountain Railway. Mm-hmm. They sent someone over to look at the line, and his exact comment to me was, Miss Caldwell, you don't have a diamond in the rough, you have a diamond. I hope I can talk my boss into purchasing this. But his boss said no. The boss owned Smoky Mountain Railway and the Silverton Durango, but he bought these things after they were up and running. He said, I don't do startups. Mm-hmm. So I called Pete Clausen up in Knoxville, and he said, I'm so tied up with railroad stuff up here, I don't need to be investing any more capital. We brought R.J. Corman down. They looked at the line, and they said, we're a little nervous about the lack of freight. So we decided that rather than go with a corporate type, we probably were better off to go with another nonprofit. And they don't require the profit margin that, a company requires. So that we've been in partnership with them since that time.
Right. So
when did the first train pull out of there? Doing passenger stuff with you guys.
With us?
Uh-huh.
I want to think, let's see, it was in 2003, and I want to think it's May. We did a VIP trip to thank our congressman and everybody that had helped with
Ron, were you on that VIP trip?
No.
Okay. You did a VIP trip with somebody like that.
I think Sandy and I had to stand, too, but that was okay. Anyway, we did, and then we started running I think we ran 6 weeks of excursions in 2003, and we ran them up just to the powerhouse. But it's a whole nother interesting story how we got the rest of the line restored, actually.
What was your question earlier, Ron?
How much the track starts where and goes to where now?
It starts 3 miles south of Etowah, milepost 339. Mm-hmm. And it goes all the way to the Tennessee-Georgia state line at Copper Hill and McKaysville, and that includes the rail yard as well.
Now, why do they call that the old line?
Oh, do you want me to tell them, or you want to tell them, Jim?
Somebody tell me. Just pull the microphone around there, Jim.
Well, the old line at the time was the only railroad between Knoxville and Atlanta.
That went through the mountains.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that went through the mountains. And in 1906, well, they started construction prior to 1906. But in 1906, they completed the current direct route between Knoxville and Atlanta. And it is the new line. The old line was completed in 1890. In fact, June the 30th, 1890. That's the reason for the 125th anniversary celebration that we are, it's currently in effect. And once we had two tracks, you had to distinguish between them, so they became the old line and the new line.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And railroaders in Etowah still refer to the mountain route as the old line and the new line. And where the old line and new line came together, that's where they built Etowah, where those two converge.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you left Etowah, you had an option. You could go up into the mountains on the old line, or you could take that flat route that just about pretty much follows Highway 411 to Atlanta.
Basically, there was nothing where Etowah is before the railroad?
Well, there was a few scattered farms, right, Sandy?
Yes. Yes.
There were a few scattered farms around. There was one pretty good-sized farm, the Peck Farm. The other pieces of property were smaller, 70 acres and less. It was a mixture of small white and black-owned farms. About 12 landowners sold property. But the site where Etowah is now was not the preferred site for the town. The railroad actually wanted to build the railroad center and the township for workers at Englewood, because both the old line and the Athens to Tellico Railroad crossed, one running north-south, one running east-west. The old Englewood mill, the first textile mill built in the 1850s at what we call Old Englewood now, down on Chestatouie Creek, they had already moved their entire operation to the junction there at Englewood. It was called Tellico Junction. So the railroad management looked at that and wisely thought that's the perfect place for it. You've already got a junction there of two railroads. This will work like a charm. But the Englewood people refused to sell property. And I think the fight was led maybe by the textile mill owner, but there was a great deal of, fear is a powerful thing. I'm editorializing a little bit, but it is. And so they scared them to death. You're going to bring in immoral influences. There will be drinking, gambling, yada, yada, yada. Things that railroaders today consider job benefits were considered a bad thing then. But anyway, they weren't comfortable with what they felt like were the immoral influences of a railroad camp. So they went down to Wetmore, because they had big tracts of land down there, and they said they were happy to provide free, I believe it was free right away through the property, but they weren't interested in selling that much property. So Etowah was not a very prime location, because aside from the Peck Farm, the rest of it was pretty much a bog. I feel sure it would be illegal, actually, to build a railroad there today, build anything there, because it was a wetland. But Etowah and Copper Hill have very unique and interesting linkages. And one of those is that in order to build a railroad center in town there, they hauled trainload after trainload of slag over that mountain and filled that wetland in.
Did not know that.
And built a canal. It was a pretty interesting story of how they did it. The thing that amazed me as a person who moved into Etowah in 1969 but came from someplace else was how truly the community was playing when the L&N civil engineers laid it out. They left places for parks and schools and churches, and they anticipated a good quality of life. It was just a very progressive way of building a worker village. Usually when you think of worker villages, you think of little mill villages, put the houses right there where everybody has to walk to the company store. In this case, they didn't build the houses. They laid out the residential streets and sold the lots. They didn't have a company store. They sold lots for private businesses. So it was kind of a unique situation.
I think actually I was telling you the other night when we were together at a gathering that Margaret Poe Trotter, who's in the Caney Creek documentary, her family was living in Etowah at the time. Her dad was working on the railroad before they moved to Caney Creek. There's actually a picture of the mom and the three little children standing out in one of the streets at Etowah.
I'd love to see that.
I'll see if I can't. I'm sure I've got it scanned. But she wrote about being a small child living in Etowah when it was a booming train town, and then the Depression hit.
Yes.
And every week somebody else's daddy got laid off, and somebody else's daddy got laid off, and then finally it was her daddy. And what a sad time it was. And she names the neighbors that lived around them, and it'd be fabulous stuff for you guys to be looking at now. And the Polk County History Branch has a copy of that. It's her handwritten stories.
Yeah, we need to. Marion Presswood's so nice to work with. Sandy Brewer, that's here, did a lot of research in 1980s. Sandy and I worked on a public history project together in Etowah, and Sandy did most of the oral histories. And I'd love for her to tell you a little bit about interviewing Horace Beavers, who was 7 or 8 years old when they built the town.
Well, Sandy, let's go back to how you did the recordings. Pull the microphone over there to you. And, of course, Ron and I are thrilled to hear this because so much history has been lost. Because we always mean to write it down, record it. And, what's funny for us is that we probably didn't do enough recording of our own moms, and they're still with us, but they can't remember their stories anymore. And how sad that is for us, but we've gone out into the world and recorded everybody else's stories. Yeah. Where are those recordings now, and how many did you do, Sandy?
I'm not too sure how many total I did. I think I did about 20, 25.
Probably about 20 or 25. Yeah. Some were transcribed, but they're in the museum in Etowah.
They're in the archives. We've got a total. We looked at them the other day. I think we've got, really and truly, I think we've got about 50 to 75, but that's over different periods of time and on different subjects other than the railroad.
Oh, on different subjects other than just like living in Etowah, just living there, or what would the other subjects be?
Well, the first oral history Sandy did in the 80s concentrated on the relationship between the L&N Railroad and the town, and within that time period were themes such as the building of the town, growing of businesses, the 1922 strike, the Depression, that sort of thing. But then she's done oral histories in Etowah later. We've done some based on other subjects and other eras, totally different focuses. And you know, even the recording equipment has gotten better.
Yes.
It's amazing what we have now.
Yeah.
It's amazing what we have now. And while it's expensive for us, it's nothing like what it used to be. So these were originally done on cassette tapes?
Yes.
And did you use a microphone?
Yes.
Yes,
I took a class.
Oh, wonderful.
It was a workshop that was offered during 1986. And in fact, the documentation and the reading of the photos, like what you're talking about, was one of those workshops. How to read an old photograph.
I would love to. I'm going to really like her presentation tomorrow. Okay, have the recordings been digitized?
Some have been digitized. Not all of them have.
Okay.
I don't know how many.
I don't know exactly how many.
How many of the railroad ones have been done?
Those I'm going to guess digitized. I'm going to guess maybe only 5. We got a piece of equipment loaned to us by Humanities Tennessee that can convert those, and we did a few of them, but we were actually doing that for a whole nother project for 3 counties, so we just did a few from Etowah. But one of the things that this organization, the Etowah Historical Commission, wants to do next year is to really get into the archives, really look at what needs to be digitized, whether it's recordings, audio, or whether we're looking at digitizing photographs. So that's a major goal that they're going to be addressing next year.
What kind of home movies do you have of the trains? Surely there are some. Surely.
I'm sure. We've not ever searched for those. We've never.
Now is the time, because what's happening is the equipment is disappearing. And so people who are really good at throwing things away, which is not Debbie Moore, I keep everything. When they empty out Grandma's house, they're getting pitched.
Right.
Or they're getting sold with the estate.
Right.
So now's the time to see if you can find some of those, because that's when we do documentaries.
That's a good idea.
It is a good idea.
The pictures are good.
Yeah.
But the movies are better.
It's really good.
Even if they're fuzzy and they're far off, it brings it to life. And even if you only have a 2-minute clip of a train coming in or a train leaving. I'm sure in '86 when the big train came through, did it come through Etowah?
We loaded at the depot.
We did a great big excursion. Jim was involved with it. We went from
and I know you've got lots of photographs.
But you're right about the film. Sandy and I were coming out of the depot a couple of months ago with Adam Alfrey, the curator of exhibits for East Tennessee History Center, and he looked at a group of men walking, and he said, "What are you all doing down here?" They were from the History Center too, the film department. And they were going through the antique shops and places looking for films of something called the Etowah Quartet. For their library up there. So, they are recognizing what you did.
Salivating. We went to some big dinner up at the East Tennessee Historical Society. I think it was the day that we showed our documentary up there. And I kept thinking, where'd Ron go? Where'd Ron go? And he had started talking to Adam. Is it Adam?
Yep.
Adam Alfrey.
From the basement. And Adam took him downstairs where all the old recordings were and all the old films. And he came back with his eyes wide open and was going, oh, my gosh. But now, see, that's a resource, too, that they will transfer things for you. They get to keep a copy of it.
But
you don't care.
Well, we don't.
No, we want them to have a copy. You need to have a copy.
You need to have a copy. And, we've got some stuff now that it would be very terribly expensive for us to get it transferred. And I think that we're going to talk with them to get stuff transferred. And when we cleaned out Ron's mom's house, we found old audio tape that we think is his dad singing in the 1950s. And we have all kinds of recording equipment, but nothing to play those. So Adam's going to get a call from me to see if he can transfer those.
Another source for preserving music, whether it's on audio or whether it's, sheet music or whatever, too, is the Center for Popular Music at Middle Tennessee State University. They have a new young director.
I saw that center.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you probably did, and I'm just astounded at what they can do.
Well, I have forgotten about that because if Adam turns me down or can't do it, which I think he's going to be able to.
Right.
Our son was looking at going to movie school over there. That's what I call it. It had a big fancy name, and they took us to the door at this music place, and we're thinking we want to go in there because it looked like it'd be someplace that we could spend the whole day.
Okay, now you was going to tell a story about some railroad person.
Horace Beavers.
Oh, I'm
Horace
sorry.
Beaver. Oh, yes.
well,
This is the way this works, Sandy.
Well,
we go all the way around the
we
loop.
work that way. That's the way we work. Horace Beaver's family was in the area when the train came, when the depot was built. And I interviewed him. He was 88 at the time. And when he was 17 years old, he had worked for the railroad. But prior to that, he told me in the interview that his family would look south and see all the lights of the new railroad station. They knew something was going on, and it was so exciting for them that all this was taking place. But he was an extremely interesting man. But he went to work at 17, and he helped with the mail. Now, he didn't carry the mail. He put up, what is that thing called that you put up to catch the mail?
Yeah,
He was a mail catcher,
It's a
whatever
hook.
that was.
There's a big
Anyway.
hook out there.
Yeah, it's a hook. That's what he did. But he was too. Like I say, he was a really interesting guy because he got to where he wanted to do something bigger, and he went out west and became a cowboy. So, but later on came back. But he just talked about the lights and how excited all of them were. But they hadn't gone yet because there really wasn't a road down there. 411. I mean, no road had been built, so it was an all-day trip. He said to get how many? 3 miles, 4 miles from
Now,
where he was down to the
411 coming up out of Georgia is part of the old Federal Road.
That's correct.
Is part of the old Federal Road up in close to
Yes.
Etowah, but it's not where 411 is.
Well, we've got two. The old Federal Road comes out of Niles Ferry up around Maryville, Virginia, and it comes down toward the Georgia line, right in Polk County somewhere or close by. Now, don't hold me to that. The Armstrong Road comes in, and that's where the drovers came from Kentucky and drove livestock.
Came
so
by Benton
those
Station.
those two converge somewhere, I think, in Polk County, and then it becomes more one road when it gets down into Georgia. So
that part of 411 was probably put there because the railroad was there, you think?
Well, I think parts of it
Was already
we've been looking at a lot of roads for our Trail of Tears project last year, and it's surprising where there were roads, and it's also surprising where there were not roads during the 1830s. But one of the things, getting back to Horace Beavers, that I always loved that he told Sandy in the oral history is that the lights, that they had been told there was going to be an electrified city built. And it was carbide lights. And remember, he said, have you ever seen a carbide light? He said, they're kind of green. And he said, we used to walk up on the knob and look down at it. It had the most amazing glow. And he said it was a couple years before he got to go down there. His daddy took him down there in the wagon. But it was quite a thing to have a city that modern. And we had a woman who moved to town. Her nickname was Dick Palmer. She was a famous music teacher in our area. And Dick was 3 years old when she moved to Etowah. It was brand new. Her daddy was an L&N blacksmith, which, according to the census we looked at, there was one on every other house was an L&N blacksmith.
Well,
But
I imagine
anyway,
it took a lot of them.
she said, what you have to remember, Linda, to me, is this was a young town full of young people and most with money in their pockets. And what made that unique, and Englewood unique as well, is there weren't a lot of people with money in their pockets. It was not necessarily a cash economy. Subsistence farming sort of ruled the day. So a lot of stuff was done with trade. Well, all of a sudden you've got young people all thrown together in a planned community from everywhere.
You
all
really
states.
need to see Margaret's stuff.
Yeah,
I think she speaks to that.
And the road, she was. I would love to see her stuff and see what she said about it, because it must have been a really exciting time to be there, and people were coming
From everywhere.
from all over.
From all walks of life.
Even foreign. When we looked at the census, we were amazed at how many foreigners were living in
Germany and England. It's kind of like the copper mines. They came in with certain skill sets that were useful. But
Linda, if you ever on your map studies, and I know that that's probably kind of behind you now, I really have never seen. I really like for somebody to help me find the Stagecoach Road that came out of Knoxville and came through Cleveland and went to Chattanooga. If you ever happen to bump into that,
I bumped into something, but I don't know if this was it or not. And looking for the Trail of Tears, I had the current county map with county roads. And, of course, we looked at the old
For
maps, the
McMinn.
old postal maps, the Ray maps that
Right.
go back to 1800. But we found a McMinn County map that was not that old, but it's not the one they're using now. And up there about where Representative John Fogarty lives, out of Athens, was a little old road, and they had marked on it Old Stagecoach Road.
oh,
So I asked him about it. He said, well, I know there was an old road that went there, but I don't know anything about it. And Joyce Reese, who's a pretty good self-taught historian out of Etowah, she kept telling me, she said there was some sort of a store there on Dr. Slowey's place, and there was an old road there. And the other thing to look at is what we call Highway 307 that goes from Etowah. Highway 307 goes from Etowah through Mount Harmony up to Highway 68 between Sweetwater and Madisonville. And in looking at this Trail of Tears, there were some folks moving up and down that road. They didn't call it that then, but I don't. But I'm not sure what.
it may have been the Stagecoach Road. You think, or you don't know?
I don't know.
It was a main drag then.
I don't know. And it's one of the things we ran into with trying to do some research on the old federal road in McMinn County is the fact that there was more than one road. Mm-hmm. You know, everybody called a lot of the different roads the old federal road. And what we found was that it wasn't like somebody came in and said, I'm going to build a road this year from point A to point B. It's like they used existing roads in some cases, declared them that for postal routes or whatever reason. Carol Ross tried to enlighten me on that one time. He's a judge on how that worked. But my husband and I live in a little subdivision called Green Hill. Out of up behind the cemetery, we have the best neighbors in Etowah.
Yeah, they're awful quiet, aren't they?
They don't bother me, and I try not to bother them. But in any case, I would look across the road behind my neighbor's house, and I would always see this row of trees that goes all the way down to 411. And I made the assumption it was a little creek. And I went over there for something one day after living there years and discovered it is a deep, deep roadbed. Mm-hmm. And the old man that lived there used to point to that all the time and tell me, he'd say, now there's the old federal road. But they call the road in front of my house the old federal road too. But it couldn't possibly, the road in front of my house couldn't have been the old federal road. So I don't know, but when you look at that road bed, it's deep like the Natchez Trace, and it's about a wagon width in width.
Okay, Deb, we got a call here.
Okay.
Good morning, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Up here at the Farmers Market on Irvine Road, and we would like for you to invite everyone to come out and visit with us. We have fresh vegetables and fruit and all kinds of baked goods. And Bobby Orr said to tell you to send everybody this way.
Okay.
Oh, Bobby Orr recommended it's got to be okay.
Sounds good.
Oh, it's really a nice farmer's market.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that they're
Bye-bye.
open up there.
Hey, folks, you're listening to Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. We got Linda and Jim Caldwell and Sandy Brewer here talking about Etowah and the O-line and trains and people and
Anything y'all
and
want to
any
talk
questions you want to talk about. Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, my name is Blake Kitterman. I'm with the Bradley County Young Democrats.
Hey, Blake. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing really good. How are y'all?
I understand you got an event tonight that you want to invite some young Democrats out to.
Yeah, we do. Well, tonight at the Museum Center at 5 Points, we're holding it at 6 o'clock. We're going to have the Tennessee Democratic Party chairwoman, Mary Mancini, Linda Sherrill, who ran against Scott Desjardins this past congressional term, Tennessee Representative Joanne Favors, along with former Congressman Lincoln Davis. So we want everyone to come out and support our youth. There's going to be free food, free admission. It's going to be a great time.
Well, we may have to just come by there and see
What
Lincoln.
time is that?
I know you do. You do have to. If not for Lincoln, then definitely for the barbecue.
Oh, well, now you're talking more. I like Lincoln, but I don't like him that much. Tell me what time that is again.
6 o'clock, and we're going to start speaking at 6:30.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell Lincoln, if I don't make it, that Ron Moore said he knows a lot of stories about him. We were JCs together for many years back in our younger days,
But
which
Ron, why
was a
can't
long
you
time ago.
Why can't you tell those stories?
I was there too. That's why I can't tell them.
Stories. What are they?
Okay.
Lincoln's a good friend of mine, and tell him I said hello. And so good luck. 6 o'clock tonight at there. If you're
At the
interested,
museum, and it's free.
if you're interested in the Young Democrats of Bradley County, imagine this is a membership drive. Is that not true?
I'm sorry, what was that?
This is a membership drive.
Oh, yeah, this is a fundraiser, this is a social, this is a kickoff. It's all three things in one.
Okay,
Sounds
well, great.
great.
And now, Blake, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Oh, wow. Well, my name is Blake Kitterman. I go to Walker Valley. I'm the senior class president over there, and I really love politics, and I think this is a great way to get involved with the Young Democrats. And I'm planning on studying political science this next year, so...
There you go. Well, Blake, good
Well,
job.
thank
sir.
you, and tell Mr. Coggin I said hello up there also.
Bye-bye, Blake. Thank you.
Cleveland that you said hello.
Okay, yeah, just tell them all. That's it. Hey, thanks, Blake. 6 o'clock tonight at the Museum Center. If you're interested in Democrat politics, come on down.
Sounds great. Well,
Thank you. Bye-bye, Blake.
I didn't know the organizer was a senior in high school. That's great.
I think so too.
Well, that's great. No matter what political party you want to go to, if get
Get
involved,
involved.
yeah,
Get involved.
get us old timers out of the way
Now,
here.
Ron and I were out past dark the other night, which is unusual for us, and we came up to Etowah to a little celebration. Would one of you talk about what was going on Tuesday night with the library? Go ahead, Linda. They're going to let you do all the talking.
Well, I guess so. They know I love to talk.
Jim, I'm going to ask you a question here. Me and you going to
No, the Carnegie Library in Etowah turns 100 years old this year. And so they have a series of things going on to commemorate that event. And it's one of the, there are not a lot of Carnegie
Well,
libraries
explain
left.
to our listeners what that is, because we don't have one of those.
Okay, well,
Not many people do.
well,
There are only 13 in Tennessee.
And a lot of them are torn down already.
Or
Yeah,
something
they're
else is
demolished.
in the building.
yeah, something else. Well, Andrew Carnegie got interested in the whole idea of reading and literature and literacy and philanthropy about the time when I think to go back, we assume that everybody has always read, and that's not the case. In the 1700s and even the early 1800s, an awful lot of people did not read or write, and later, as they did, there weren't a lot of free public libraries. So the notion that we've always had access to books free and everybody could read and write is just not the case. It's actually been pretty recent history. But I didn't know a lot about Andrew Carnegie, except he was famous. He was a steel industrialist, made a lot of money, and built a lot of libraries until I went to the event that the Friends of Carnegie Library had, and you guys were there.
One of our guests, our listeners' favorite speakers, Joe Guy, did the presentation. on
Joe
Carnegie.
did a phenomenal
He did a great job.
because, he's really busy. He has like a real day job, and
It's just a county job. It ain't no
yeah,
big deal.
well, he works pretty hard. But anyway, he was asked
does
if
work
he
hard.
could come in and talk a little bit about Andrew Carnegie and the library movement, and then David James spoke about like libraries specifically in Etowah and his experiences with the libraries as a child.
We're going to
But-
try to get David to come on our show too.
well,
he's quite
en-
a character.
He's entertaining too. But anyway, the funny thing is, Joe, I thought, boy, we're asking a lot of Joe because he's going to have to do some research and he doesn't have a whole lot of time. And then when I got to the event that you guys were at, it was apparent that he'd put a lot of time into the research. And so I mentioned that to him afterwards, and he said, well, to be honest, I got into it and I couldn't quit. He said there were so many things I didn't
Carnegie
know
was
about
born
him.
in a one-room cabin in Scotland,
yeah.
and by the time he died, I can't even imagine. It was billions of dollars that he was worth, and he'd given billions of dollars away.
What was it? Joe said that he
He did the terrible word, redistribution.
he said you should spend your lives in three parts. And
Yes.
the first third is learn. The second part is earn every dollar that you can.
Yes.
And the last third is to give it all away. So
Or give it
he
all
did.
back, yeah.
He built 2,700 libraries worldwide, and 1,700 of them in the country, 13 in Tennessee, and a lot of those buildings have been demolished now, and there are just a few are libraries. I don't know if any of them are libraries now.
Well,
or
there's
not.
only 3 that were in what you call rural communities.
Yes.
The rest of them were in urban areas.
More
so-
urban areas.
And Etowah, the L&N Railroad has a lot to do with it because they donated the land for them to
Right.
build it. I think he would give you the seed money to build it, but you had to find the
match it.
land and match it, and also man it afterwards and agree to run his
I agree to
library.
run it.
The grant was $5,000. When you look at in today's money, that's nothing. But
Yeah.
to build the
But
library,
that was big
But
money.
again, yeah.
So, Jim, let me ask you a question here.
Jim's looking at me like, nah.
And his proper name is Carnegie.
Yeah,
It was
that's
Andrew
what I bet.
Carnegie, but
That's what I
we
was
call
told.
it Carnegie Hall in New York, so we all do that. Jim, I need help here on the railroads here. Coming, the railroad that runs down through Etowah, runs through 411 on down to Georgia through where my mama lived in Tinga. In Tinga, Georgia. And as a matter of fact, it was named by the railroad, Tinga. It was Whippoorwill, and they named it Tennessee, Georgia.
It was named what first?
Whippoorwill.
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 Oh, I
and,
love that.
And then it had become just Whip, and it actually became a city at one time for about 3 years. And it said, we don't want to be a city anymore in Georgia. But anyway, so that railroad runs down through there. But there's another railroad runs from down on US 11, comes down into Cleveland. Now, are those both L&Ns? I mean, where do they come? I
They're
mean,
all shaking
they,
their head
They
no.
parallel with each other. And
They're two different companies.
Jim, tell me where they all start. Do you know?
I don't know. Probably the NS, the Norfolk Southern, is the other railroad.
Right, it's a Norfolk Southern now.
Yeah, and it is a parallel railroad, but there's quite a few miles between the railroads.
So they both go to Knoxville?
Don't they come together in Chattanooga and then go down south?
Yes, because there's an interchange in Chattanooga between, in other words, an NS train, a Norfolk Southern train, can get permission and come on to part of the CSX tracks now, and they interchange with each other so that they can service businesses that they have on in the areas where the other trains service.
Well, we know the trains in Cleveland come through about 1850. Now, when is the track through Etowah? What year is that?
All right, you've got. Let's talk about 3 different eras.
Okay.
The very first railroad built into East Tennessee was between Calhoun, Tennessee, and Athens.
That's amazing, isn't it?
And actually, it was built in, I think the road was graded in about 1836.
Let's get this call here real quick.
Sorry,
Hold that thought.
Okay, hold
Go ahead, caller.
But there's 3 different
Go ahead, caller.
things going on.
Push the button again.
Are you there?
Hello,
Hey, that sounds like T. Hello.
this is T-Bad.
Hey.
Go ahead, T.
Now, I want to let you know I had a fish truck coming next Saturday,
All right.
the 25th.
478-2405 if you need to order fish for your pond. And what time will the fish be there, T?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. He's even got containers for you, but call and order what you want.
Yeah, or come by.
Or come by. Thanks, T.
My order called in, yeah.
Tell them the number again.
Talk to you. Take care, Debbie.
All right, 478-2405.
If you want to order fish for your ponds, your lakes,
Bye, T.
you can do that and come by there and pick them up.
We provide such services.
Well, I
Wait.
think it's nice. It
Got
really it brings the community together. But getting back to that
Got one
railway.
more call coming here.
Oh,
We get started and we get busy.
That's
Good
okay.
morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, I was wondering about the railroad.
Go ahead.
What is the time and that they'll be riding the passengers?
okay. We'll go over that right now. You want to hang up and listen, or you going to hang on?
Yeah, I'll listen.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, passenger trains run on the Old Line Railroad from the first weekend in April through the last weekend in November. The schedule varies a little bit because it starts out on weekends, builds up, then it cuts back in August, and then it builds to almost every day of the week in the fall. The best way to find out exactly when it's running is two ways. You can call the Etowah Depot at 263-7840. Talk to the ticket office. She's open there from Tuesday through Saturday from about 8:30 to 4:30. And she has a schedule. She can print a schedule and mail it to you, or she can tell you. If you have access online, you can go to www.tvrail.com and search for Hiwassee River Rail Adventure and find the excursion schedule there.
Linda, give us that number again.
It's 423-263-7840.
And there are 87 trips that will be running. 57 of the trips will start at G Creek and be a round trip to Farner, Tennessee, which is through the loop, and then back to the boarding station or the boarding area at G Creek. That's about a 3.5 hour trip.
I love going over that loop.
Oh, the loop
It's
is
exciting
awesome.
and scary and fun, and it's a marvel. How in
And
the world
then-
did they do that?
Beautiful. That's beautiful country.
It certainly is, and we did that a few years ago with our kids and really enjoyed it.
There are 50 trips that go all the way to Copper Hill and back.
I haven't done that one.
And there is a 2-hour layover in Copper Hill so that you can eat and walk around a little bit because you've been sitting for some time. That's about a 9.5 hour round trip. And 3 days. There are 3 days during the trips that there are 2 trips that run, and they are to Farner and back, through the loop and back.
Okay, I really appreciate
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
I heard you join.
At the risk of just jumping from one thing to another.
Go ahead and jump.
He mentioned the loop, and we were just talking about the library.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the people who helped the library get started was a guy named T.A. Aber. He designed the loop and probably laid out Etowah. He was an L&N civil engineer. And we have been looking for years for a photograph of Mr. Aber. We would find photographs that say, here are the people who started the library, here's the Masonic Lodge, but they were never identified. So a friend of mine, Chester Brandon, who is over the lodge in Etowah, said to me,
And a retired
railroader. He said, if he was a master of our lodge, we've got a picture of him somewhere. So he brought an 8x10 down.
How
For
exciting.
us this week. Sandy and I were so excited. And so his photograph is probably going to be included in the new exhibit we're doing because I'm convinced that Mr. Aber was sort of a genius.
Well, to make that loop. Now, did they try it without the loop first?
Yes.
How'd
and
that
there
work,
is-
Jim?
That is
They have
Well,
switchback.
I think I can. I
It's
think I
It's
can.
called a
I think-
switchback.
It's a W.
Right.
It's a switchback. And to be quite honest with you, I had the opportunity as a railroader to work a switchback myself up in the Lowell, Kentucky area. But the switchback that we're referring to up Ball Mountain to get the train from Etowah to Copper Hill or from the area up to Copper Hill, if you had a 28-car train, you had to cut 24 cars off to start with, take 4 up the switchback, set them out in a passing track or a house track, and come back and get 4 more. So if you had a 28-car train, you had to make 7 trips up that mountain or down the mountain. Now, you can imagine what kind of time-consuming situation that is. Whereas now that the loop is there, the loop allows you to take whatever your motive power will pull without any extra trips. And when I was working there, and we were running freight from Etowah all the way down through the old line, if we had, say, a 95-car train, once the locomotive was on top of the loop trestle, he was looking down on the caboose at the end of the 95-car train.
That'd be wild.
Now, so how many miles around the loop if you count it? It goes around the mountain twice, right?
It's a 540-degree loop, and it's 8,000 feet, I believe, is what the...
mile and a half, a little over a mile and a half.
Yes.
Wow. All right.
Someone called the
Now,
depot the other day, and they were confused. They thought the entire excursion was 8,000 feet. We said, no. It's 47 miles.
It's
just
a little longer.
Yeah, a little
now, the
longer.
loop, there's only a couple of
Yeah,
those
that's what I
in
was
the country, is there not?
I think there are still 2, possibly 3 intact loops in the United States. Our loop is supposedly the 3rd longest loop in the world. And I honestly, actually Googled railroad loops this past week, and I could not believe the number of international railroad loops that exist in the world.
But not in the United States.
No.
It seemed like Colorado, I read one time, has one.
I think
I'm not
there's
sure.
2 intact loops left in the
Now,
United
can you
States.
see the loop without being on the train? I mean,
The only way to get into the Hiwassee River Gorge and that area of the loop is on foot or on that train. Once you leave Appalachia
Foot's
Powerhouse.
too long, I can assure you already.
No, once you
Too
leave
high.
Appalachia Powerhouse, you don't find road access till you get practically to Farner. So there's about a 27, 28 mile section of that railroad that there's only 2 ways in.
you know,
on the
and
train or on
I'm
foot.
thinking in my mind, okay, in Polk County, we have the Flume line.
Yes.
There's not another one of those working in
Oh,
America. And then here we have this loop, and there's very few of those working in America. What great resources we have around here, so you can see the way things used to be.
And the thing about it
And they're
is,
unique.
you can actually see the origin of the Flume line from the railroad,
Oh, okay.
and that's at Hiwassee Dam.
Okay.
And I believe there's
Are you sure it
37.
doesn't come from Blue Ridge Dam?
I think that Flume line is 37 miles long. I believe that's what it is. But there is an access to that Flume line at the south end of Appalachia Siding.
Now, that's the underground Flume line. Or-
Yes,
yeah,
it
the
is.
underground
We're
Flume
talking
line.
about 2
Yes.
different
We're-
things.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's still amazing too that
Oh,
they can't.
yes.
Well, they built that first one all the way down the river and went, "Hey, there's got to be an easier way." So when they got farther up on the river, they started putting it through the tunnels and things.
We didn't get to when the railroads were built.
Well, when that first
We'll get back to that.
Okay.
Whenever you want to. Just you don't.
Well, what I was going to say about that, you know, you had asked about these 2 railroads running parallel. Yes. And that's part of the whole story. The 1836 building of what was called the Hiwassee Railroad between Calhoun, and Athens, we actually discovered, and this was new information this year, that that section of that roadbed was used during the Trail of Tears. Over 3,000 Cherokee people used that roadbed to walk from Athens, Tennessee down to Calhoun. And nobody thought that was the case. But what happened, they built that railroad. Basically, the project went financially belly up, and the roadbed laid there with no track on it for a good while. That is now part of what became Southern Railroad and is Norfolk Southern. Okay. That railroad was built before this railroad was built from Knoxville to Atlanta that goes through the mountains. And when they started talking about building the railroad from Knoxville to Atlanta through the mountains, by then the nation was just crazy over railroads. Everybody was trying to build a railroad. So,
and every little group was trying to build a railroad. There was like no regulation. It was just
right.
Crazy.
Everybody, and there's some interesting things about that popped up during the research we've done on this. But in any case, it was really a big push out of Knoxville to build this line south through the mountains to serve the copper mines, marble quarries, and whatever. But a guy named George Eager was put in charge of building that line. He had built the Marietta, North Georgia, up to the Georgia-Tennessee line. So they got him and his company, Knoxville Southern, built the road from Knoxville to the Tennessee-Georgia line. They got George Eager to do it. He was experienced. He came out of Boston, knew what he was doing. But they told him, said, if you will get that railroad within 1 mile of Knoxville, by June 30th, 1890, we'll give you, I can't remember if it's $250,000 or $275,000 bonus. Not to be sneezed at. So when the crews are working north, they're coming out of the Copper Hill area, they're working north. The crews from Knoxville are working south. They get to the tough part, the serious railroad building in the Hiwassee River Gorge. They discovered that there's several hundred feet of elevation difference here. Uh-oh. Whoops, and here's this
Dukes
mountain.
Of Hazzard.
Yeah, what are we going to do? So he wanted that bonus, so he hurriedly built a set of switchbacks.
Yes, and the elevation, let's say Etowah is a 0 elevation and Farner is 1,100 feet elevation. So, and not that difference between 0 and 1,100 is that great, but you've got to look at what type of topography it goes through.
That's right.
We're talking about mountains of stone and gorges where
big time.
The water, a river flows through.
Now, I know when we were working on Caney Creek, people told us that there was an L&N spur at Ocoee that ran the trains up to the new dam.
That there was one.
There was one.
Uh-huh.
And they took those tracks up in the 1970s.
But see, that track would have been built probably 1906 or 1910 when they built the dam in there.
Yeah.
After the new line. But one of the things I wanted to mention about the old line and the new line is we've got this old line built. We've got switchbacks so Mr. Eager can get his bonus. We're also competing with this railroad you just mentioned that's running parallel from Knoxville south to Atlanta, but it's running on flat land. Both railroads were trying to get the coal business out of Cincinnati. So here you've got this railroad coming through Cleveland, booking along fast, and here you've got this thing chugging up here trying to take 4 cars at a time in the switchbacks. So at the time this was going on, the AK&N owned that railroad line, Atlanta, Knoxville, and Northern. They borrowed T.A. Aber from the L&N to come in and solve this problem. So that's why he ended up creating the loop. Okay. Well, even after they created the loop, they still couldn't move trains fast enough to compete with that flat land. Still slow.
Yeah.
So that's why they said we're going to build a bypass. We're going to keep the mountain route to serve the copper mines, marble quarries, the timber, whatever, but we're going to build a bypass for the other freight. So that's why they built that 80-mile section from Atlanta up to Etowah. It was basically what you would think of as a bypass. And so where they two converged, that's where Etowah was built.
Yeah, and that's at Marietta.
Well, I'm talking about where they converged at Etowah on the north end. Right. And then they converge on the south end at Marietta.
Yes.
That's right.
Wow.
I imagine a lot of the lumber for Conasauga was dedicated because that line went through there.
When they
Could be.
Yeah,
when
they
through
shipped a lot out of there.
about 1910 or so, the train went through Tinga.
Mm-hmm.
And the only things that were there was the Tinga Depot, and Conasauga just opened up. The lumber mill just opened up.
I found an interesting story about Tinga doing that research on the Trail of Tears in the Murray County, Georgia book.
What was that?
The interesting story? Well, there was some sort of a community there that had several, what did they call bars back then?
Saloons.
The Staggered
No.
Inn?
No, the Stagger Inn was later.
No, and it said that there were workers there for
Taverns.
something.
Saloons.
Or taverns.
Well, but said they would go from one to the other,
Mm-hmm.
and as the evening wore on, and they got drunker, they would become more violent, and that there were a lot of fights and stuff. We forget that all that sort of thing is not new behavior. The first passenger train, the first time I read anything about the first train on the old line, when the line was finished, and that's the one we're going to duplicate on June 27th.
Not all do.
Yeah, part of it, but the first train was described
Not the fun part.
as an elegant occasion. Well, it was, because they had a bunch of dignitaries and people from companies on it. But the first passenger train, I have never found anything written about it, like in a history book or newspaper. But we found an oral history from up at Turtletown. And what the man said was that it was a raucous affair, that the passengers were completely drunk, out of their mind, out of control. They cut up the seats, and that they had the conductors and crewmen had to go through the cars with picks and what do you call like axe handles and quell the crowd. Now that would be a living history reenactment worth going to. But in any case, folks behaved, I think, sometimes in different ways.
Well, Ron,
if all that happened down in Tinga, that was all my relatives. I can almost assure you.
Ron's uncle or great uncle built the first jail, little Holden building in Tinga, and guess who got to use it first? Him. Took his money he made off the jail and had him a drink or two, and ended up in the jail for the evening. Ron, are we ready to go to
we're
break?
going to take a break. Hey, we'll be back here in
Don't
about
go
5-6 minutes. We'll be back here with Old Town Cleveland, and we're talking about Etowah and the O-line, and
You know what? It wasn't Tinga.
we'll talk
either.
about
It's
anything.
Springtown.
Springtown. Oh, that's a different place.
I told him a big lie. It was Springtown.
Well, we did it down there too. All right, we'll be back in just a few moments here.
I had forgotten.
You are listening to
looking-
WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. Whoop FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash. The cash you need is closer than you think.
Get an auto title loan today for up to $2,500 at Check Into Cash.
You drive home with the cash in your pocket.
Visit Check Into Cash for an auto title loan today, or get a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH. Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
You should be kissed and often, and by someone who knows how.
I won't think about that now. I'll think about that tomorrow.
Frankly, my dear, I don't.
I'm about to whip somebody's ass. Oh, I'm about to whip somebody's ass. Oh, if you don't leave me alone, you're gonna have to send me home, 'cause I'm about to whip somebody's ass.
Hello, this is the Matador. You know, every once in a while, you and your spouse or maybe a girlfriend might get into a little dispute. The new policy is now if you call the police, they're going to take both of you. It's going to cost twice as much. But if you want someone to bond you out, someone that's going to be there quick and dependable, that's Speedy's Bonding. who's been in service for 25 years. If you say the Matador, you can get 25% off. And his number is 479-9905.
All of my friends that I loved yesterday have gone. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. The songbirds are singing. The dells seem to say have gone. They have gone home. Gone. They have gone home. They've joined the heavenly fold. They're walking the streets of pure gold. They left one by one as their work here was done. Gone home. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. Life here is lonely since they've gone before. Gone. They have gone home. Gone. They have gone home. The old weeping willow that stands by the door sadly sighs. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. They've joined the heavenly fold. They're walking the streets of pure gold. They left one by one as the work here was done. Gone home. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. They've joined the heavenly fold. They're walking the streets of pure gold. They left one by one as their work here was done. Gone home. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. Where'd the old town go? They moved it all north of here in a shopping mall. Where'd the old town go? Did my hometown get old, or just me? Did all my friends get old, or just me? Are they all gonna have to be told, or just me?
Welcome back to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. Today we're talking about Etowah, the train line, all the way to
Carnegie
Copper Hill.
Library.
We've talked a little bit of all of that. And
You know, I didn't know that stuff was hauled from Copper Hill. That slag.
Oh, well, that's
to fill
interesting.
in the
Sure is.
swamp.
Couldn't
do that today.
You can call us here at 614-5553. Like I say, you can go on the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can see us and hear us here, and you can also, there is a chat option there. You can actually chat with Deb as we go on through the show. You have to register with the program. You can check on Old Town Cleveland on Facebook every week at Old Town Cleveland, and if you'd like to join, there are too many members on Old Town Cleveland, so you have to go to Friends of Old Town Cleveland. Now you can join there. You get the same post and the same information, and
Ron, I had something interesting.
Before I forget,
this week.
we just played Gone Home, and that's for all the people who've passed this week. We play that every week just to honor those people that's gone on.
And we lost Imogene Woods this week, and
Right.
she was a good friend of ours and loved to listen to the show, and our sympathies go out to her family. This week I happened to be looking on eBay for photographs to use in our Ducktown Basin documentary, and happened to type in Cleveland, Tennessee, and a photo came up. And there's a place called Historic Images that you can buy old newspaper pictures. Apparently when places clean out their old newspaper pictures, this place buys them and they resell them. Well, there was a picture on there from Cleveland, Tennessee of a PFC named Coy Tinsley, a 1969 picture, and he had been a prisoner of war in Viet Cong and or Vietnam, and they had just released him, and it was the moment he reunited with his wife in Fort Campbell. And it broke my heart to know that picture was on eBay for sale and the family might miss it. So I got on Facebook, and it was at 10 minutes to our Old Town Cleveland friends had shared that, and we found the family. But another veteran that was watching, Billy Massengale, I believe was his name, he thought it was a shame that Mr. Tinsley might have to purchase his own picture, and so he has purchased it for him, and is going to get it to the Tinsley family. And I thought that was just a really nice story.
Yes.
And the Tinsley family from out in Prospect area.
Prospect, and we've invited Coy and his brothers to come on and tell us all about Prospect, and we're hoping that they'll accept that invitation and come on and be with us one day coming soon. I think this next Saturday we're going to have Chip Bryant on, and we're going to be talking about Sheriff Israel Smith and the murder and the trial from that murder.
Murdered by the Boring brothers down there.
Yep.
He was raiding the moonshine still, and
Yep.
so we're. And if you have interesting stories or interesting family fun members who tells crazy stories and lies, not everybody has to lie now. Linda, I didn't want you to take that way.
Notice he said Linda.
Linda, well, Jim and I, we understand.
Linda and I are just fountains of useless information.
We don't lie, we embellish. Isn't that right, Jim?
This is very true.
Embellish is a totally different word. That's creative lying, though. But if you have family members and you want them to come on and tell the stories about their neighborhoods and their families, that's what we look for here. We like the funny, the serious. We like it all. So bring them on here. Mm-hmm. We just want to save history here in our community in the East Tennessee area.
I'd like to thank the Rotary Club that invited me out Tuesday to speak to them, and I talked to them about historical markers and the lack thereof historical markers in Bradley County. All this wonderful history here, and we've over the years purchased 11 historical markers. Now, the big metal ones from the Tennessee History Commission. We've put in some other signage here in the last few years, but we're trying to get back on track. And
of those 11, most of them are missing.
Or four of them are missing.
Yeah.
And they're like $1,700 each.
Well, a lot of them went away during a time, I think, when metal went up or iron, I was told.
Scrap.
Because we had some around in Polk County and McMinn County. It just disappeared.
They disappeared, pole and all, here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, surely, I mean, those posts are full of concrete. I didn't see any need to take that. And those are when I think maybe progress got in the way, or they got in the way of the mowers one time too many, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're trying to get 2 of those replaced. The Candies Creek Mission, which would go out at Highway 60 at Paul Huff Parkway,
DeSoto's route,
and DeSoto's route down here in McDonald. And the Historical Society here, Bradley County Historical and Genealogy Society, is working on getting that one replaced, the DeSoto one.
You've got a sign that intrigues me, a highway sign. We go to Ooltewah a lot, and sometimes we take the back road down here through Bendabout Farm.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little road sign there that says Dance Hall Road. And every time I go by there, I wonder, what's the story there?
Well, down in that community...
Talking about drunks and fights.
Well, not originally. There's a lot of different types of water comes up out of the ground in that community. So Mineral Park was there. And in the old days, people came and soaked in the water thinking that it would, heal them. At Tucker Springs, there's iron water and just fresh water coming up out of the ground just a few feet from each other.
Wow.
And people would come on the train from Florida with empty jugs. Ron kind of thinks maybe there was a jug or two of moonshine in there that went home, but mostly they came to get water. And then that building that's still there at Dance Hall Road was Mineral Park, and
It's
they
gone
had
now.
the building's gone.
I think the red building's gone, isn't it? Or no, it's the Mineral Park bar's gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the red building's gone yet.
Well, anyway, there was a big building there, and that's where they had dances, and there was a skating rink there at some time, and so that's how it got to be Dance Hall Road.
On one 7 acres, there's 7 different springs there around Mineral Park, within a couple acres each other, and there's 7 types of different water.
That's amazing.
Arsenic water, mineral water.
That's
I don't know what you
amazing.
want with arsenic water, but some people drink it to really.
There's a little book called McDonald and the Everons, and I know that they sell them at the Museum Center. And the first Saturday of each month, they have a wonderful breakfast down in McDonald. And sometimes they sell them there, but it tells all about those waters, and it's
I think
just
there was
really
7
amazing.
different resorts in that area down
I
there.
had no idea.
Louderbeck, Powder Springs, Mineral
See, the
Park,
railroad.
Tucker Springs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the
Railroad. The railroad brought them through there,
that'd be
and
a
then
great way to get
that
there.
was part of the concrete highway that came through in 1935ish, and that was when that big, craze was going on about the mineral waters and stuff, and so. The railroad brought them in, and the road brought them in, and that is where the original roadbed was for the Indian trading path. Came right through there, and that was part of what was on that DeSoto sign. It says that's the road he brought it. He took into Bradley County, and went on over to Conasauga and Wetmore.
And some of the resorts probably had some gambling going on also.
Sandy Brewer has got a really interesting uncle. He just turned what?
100.
100.
Yeah.
He was a steam locomotive engineer and fireman and diesel. But I want Sandy to tell you all.
Where does he live?
Oh, he
Well,
lives in Etowah.
he's in Etowah.
To tell you the story.
Can he come
of
on
the,
and do our show? No, okay.
He
Waited
would
just a little. We had 100-year-old on this year.
Well, he's very sharp. He's just, physically. But tell them the story that he tells about the moonshine coming out of the hotel at Probes down at Etowah.
He would run the passenger trains between Etowah and Copper Basin, and the train would go up in the morning, and that was 1, and he'd come back in the evening, and that was number 4. And coming back, they would pick up a young woman who had a baby and was carrying a market basket, and the market basket had she carried the baby, but the market basket had the blankets over it. And what it was she was carrying moonshine, and she came on in to Etowah and stayed at the Stafford Hotel overnight and sold her moonshine, and then got back on and went back to Probst, and that was the cash crop. I mean,
Sure.
there was a lot of people that couldn't live without the moonshine. But
Sandy, did you record his stories?
I've not. I have not recorded that. I have recorded him, but I have kept a journal on him, and I've
good.
kept his stories. Yes,
That's good.
Yes.
Right.
I had some railroad folks on here one day, and they said they called it Moonshine Hill. It was somewhere between here and Chattanooga. And as they go down and they start up the hill, the train would slow down because it was having a hard time making the grade, I reckon. And the moonshiners would stand around there. They knew when the trains were coming through, and they'd run alongside the train and swap money for moonshine.
Well, that's how Talking Rock got its name. Talking Rock, Georgia. They had a rock down there that they left messages about picking up moonshine. And that's how Talking Rock got their name.
Well, we've had old moonshiners tell us too that they had their regular customers that they just left the cord out in the woods in an old rotten stump, and they'd go back and pick up their money.
Well, the A&T that was between Tellico and Athens, I interviewed a engineer's wife, and she told about that they actually brought a lot of moonshine out of Tellico on the A&T.
Well, I imagine that they would, like say, it was a cash crop in.
Best way to get corn to market.
Sometimes that was their only.
That was
cash
their
crop.
only, and I've talked to several people about this, and they said that the local sheriff really get after them because really and truly that was the only way they could live.
He'd rather be doing that than
Long
stealing.
as
to
he got a
feed
jar or
the family.
two.
Yeah.
Long as, yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
there was a payment.
Yeah.
One of the families up in Ducktown told me that their daddy didn't buy moonshine; he traded sugar for it.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Well,
There you go.
Well, that.
Well, you know, there was a discussion a few years ago about whether or not to have a liquor store in Etowah, and a number of people said to me, you know, this has just never been a drinking town or county. And about that time, I was doing some research on the Trail of Tears, and Bill Aiken said, I think I made mention in my history of the Civil War about an old road. Mm-hmm. And it may have been Stage Road now that I think about it. He said, so get that book out and look at it. Well, Bill starts anything he writes. He's a wonderful historian. He really sets the context. He goes back 10 or 20 years. And in doing so with this, he had looked at the McMinn County census before the Civil War. I guess 1850 or 60, I've forgotten. One of the census. He didn't comment on this. He just had a list, and I was rather astounded. There were 5 legal distilleries in McMinn County. One pumped out 6,000 gallons of whiskey a year. There were 2,500 people living in the county, and I did learn a little bit of math at Narrows Elementary School. Somebody was drinking some whiskey.
Well, now
there
there
be
was
3
a
gallons
distillery.
each, or if half of them done there, some people be drinking 6 gallons each, right?
Well, I don't know. They may have been selling it, taking it out, but I suspect more was consumed than maybe we
Yes.
think it was.
Well, I know that there was a distillery even prior to the removal that you can find paperwork on with the Jack Walker and some of the folks talking about a distillery, I believe, around Conestoga.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there was a distillery in Charleston. So it was just the way to turn stuff into money. And eventually, somewhere along the way, that all fell apart.
When I was growing up, my father used to make reference to an old bootlegger up in Virginia, and somebody asked him, you know, if his stuff was good. Says, "Is your stuff good? Do you drink it?" He said, "That stuff's not for drinking. That stuff's for selling."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my husband's family with their Black Angus cattle. So pretty. Somebody said, "Y'all eat a lot of beef," and they said, "No, we eat pork and chicken. That's not for eating. That's for selling."
That's right.
That's right. That's right. I know that someone up in, well, I lost my train of thought there. My train of thought
We're
pulled
talking
out of the
about
station
train.
without.
We got off on the train.
Just go.
Your train got derailed.
It got derailed.
Yeah.
It was a good story. I just can't remember it.
Sandy,
It'll come back.
you interviewed how many railroad families here? Has this been recently?
Oh no, this was back in the late '80s because we were doing a public history project in Etowah.
I didn't know it had been recently. Now, let me ask. I read because everybody says, "Well, where do these names like Conestoga and Hiwassee and all that comes from?" I said, "Well, we were in the middle of Indian territory. This was Cherokee land and everything, but Etowah is not named after a Cherokee Indian. No. It's not named after an Indian. It's an Indian word, I understand, but not. That's not why it's not called Etowah.
Tell
though,
us
is
about
it?
it, Linda.
Well,
this is the story I've read.
Before Sandy and a group of us did the research in the late 80s on the history of Etowah, we had been told it was a Cherokee word that meant muddy waters because the area was so muddy. But that's not true.
No.
It's a Creek word, which we've been. Now, I'm not a language person, but we looked it up, and it's a Creek word, and it means town or tribe. It was first recorded in writing in Hernando de Soto's Chronicles, and it was somewhere in Alabama or somewhere. He wrote ITAWA for town or tribe. We do not know who named Etowah. Some people think maybe it was the civil engineers. Some people think it might have been a railroad crew. That there's a siding down at on the new line at Etowah River, isn't it? They wondered if they just picked up a sign. What Frank McKinney said in 1956 in the Golden Jubilee newspaper was that a such and such date in 1906, 2 posts appeared on the lawn in front of the depot with a sign that said Etowah. We have never determined exactly who named it.
That's what I read. It was just that they thought a railroad worker had, because it did mean town, and someone had just put Etowah up.
We don't know.
And it stuck. Now, was it the Etowah River before it was Etowah?
Oh, the Etowah River's
the Etowah
been there
River.
for
Okay.
And the Etowah Mountains.
and the
you know,
Etowah
all that.
Mountains down in Georgia.
I always
Cartersville.
thought it was because the Etowah River is so muddy. If y'all have ever been,
Yeah.
it's always muddy. Well, when you hear the people that came to Etowah talk about the whole area, it was just mud and just awful. And I don't know, I like that story. I think that they've seen the river, the muddy river, and had water running everywhere in Etowah down the street, and they just named it Etowah.
Well, so actually, it's not a Cherokee word, folks. I had said for years, well, Etowah and Ocoee and all this, these are Indian terms.
Well,
And
we have a lot of-
Conestoga means strong horse. You got to be careful how you spell that when you're typing in I got left out an S. But somebody says, I don't think that's what was the Indian word.
Shirley Lawrence questioned that one.
So that's not a strong horse.
Yeah.
Well, that's like Hiwassee. There is a spelling of Hiwassee, Hiwassee. There is a spelling Hiawasssee. And I actually have seen an old track profile that's got Hivatschie. And that is the only place I am searching and searching and searching to try to find that track profile again that has that Hivachi crossing.
And by the way, the track profile's in our house, if it gives you any indication of how well organized we are.
We have that at our house too. Deb has been looking for a folder, and she looked for something else that day. Says, "Oh, it's here." And I said, "Well, you should be filed A, B, C, D." It said by subject.
I looked for that yellow folder, and when I found it, I remembered I put it in a real sturdy green folder for safekeeping.
Well, you were talking also about some of the old records and the old names for communities. And I was looking at a timetable from 1893 from Knoxville to Atlanta. And coming through this area, or our area, you come by Tellico Junction, which is now Englewood. And then you come to Grady, which is now Etowah. And then you go up the Hiwassee River, starting up the old line, and you come to a place called Higdon. Well, Higdon is now Reliance.
Okay.
Of course, the Higdon Hotel is still there.
Yeah.
Another thing that people don't realize is that a lot of the old depots were converted boxcars. Harold Webb has an old boxcar depot there on the farm at Reliance that he brought across the river on a bridge. And he said it was one more complicated project getting that boxcar across that bridge.
It was probably pretty complicated too in Charleston when they did the reenactment of the burning of the bridge. I'm sure the modern day railroad people weren't real amused with that idea. I remembered what it was I was going to talk about a few minutes ago. A lot of our words in this area actually are Creek words, and when even the Cherokees didn't know what the words meant, they just said them because that's what the places had always been called. And so sometimes when we start trying to translate, that's some of the problem with the translation is that the words aren't Cherokee, they're Creek.
That's right.
That's right.
That's what I've been told.
That's what I've been told. So tell us about this 125th year anniversary train ride again. What's special about it?
Well, in June, the last Saturday, I guess, in June of 1890 was the first trip from Knoxville to Atlanta. And what they did, they brought people from north and south together. And at a place in the old line in Polk County called Appalachia, the trains met, and they got out and drove a gold spike into the ground to commemorate the occasion. So that's kind of what we're doing. Actually, I think it was really kind of Jim's idea. He kept nagging all of us. This is the 125th year. Somebody ought to acknowledge this. Well, this is the 125th year. We ought to be doing something.
Good for you, Jim.
Let me enlighten you just a little bit. This is the project of the Etowah Historical Commission, with
Yeah.
which I'm associated, and so are these two ladies. But it's a multifaceted project, not just a train ride. But these two are building a permanent exhibition in 2 rooms on the 2nd floor of the L&N Depot in Etowah. We are restoring the L&N caboose that's sitting on the grounds at the Etowah Depot. We have a large accumulation of artifacts in the archive area, and we are going to eventually have everything digitized and stored in archival containers. Now, this is an expensive project, yes. We leased the train from TVRM in hopes of selling at least 80 tickets. Well, the train sold out within less than 6 weeks. And we're going to clear a decent amount of money as part of the fundraising project for this, for the
people with passion do.
Yes.
If they can make it happen.
If they can make it happen. And you know, but we did set this trip apart from any other trip in that the passengers who come are paying the same price they would pay any other time on the trip, but they're going to arrive a little early. And we're going to have a continental breakfast at the depot for them, fruit and donuts and coffee and such. And the exhibit that we're working on does not officially open till July, but they're going to get
July 4.
the sneak preview. Our local newspapers have come together and they're doing a souvenir insert, special edition, and we're working on content with them. And they're going to give back 10% of their advertising on that insert to the Etowah Historical Commission for some of this work they're doing, because like he said, some of this stuff is expensive. The caboose has been a lot more expensive than we anticipated.
The ride right now, all parts of that train are sold out?
Every seat is sold out.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm really glad to hear that too. But okay.
We had no idea that it would sell that quickly.
And those tickets weren't cheap.
No, they're not cheap.
Go ahead, Sandy. Get a microphone there.
The expensive ones went first.
Yes.
The 120.
That's
the
the passionate historians there. And the expensive ones were in a dome that's all glass windows kind of thing.
Yes, and people can ride that throughout the year. The dome car is wonderful. I tell you, there's a whole history behind that car.
Where did it come from?
Well, I was going to tell you. It's called the Algonquin.
I'm glad you set me up on that.
Yeah, she set you right up. A good segue. It's called the Algonquin, and when it came in, I was still working at the Tennessee Overhill office, and they said, we've got a dome car that's come in. I said, oh, great. So they said part of it's observation, part of it's dome.
Hold that thought.
Hold that thought, Linda.
Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yes.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I was calling there. Is the 5 Points? Wasn't that the depot down there in Cleveland?
Yes, in Cleveland, the depot is at 5 Points. I understand that the original one was just a little bit south in that big building that's there that used to be hold wood and stuff, or that's where they shipped wood out of. And the depot that was restored in recent years was from 1912.
Yes. I knew I'd been down there as a child, riding over through there on my bike, and I'd see them guys in there working. And I always thought about all that. It's really growed up, and I just know I've been listening to you there and hadn't heard you say anything about 5 Points.
Yeah, well, we're mostly talking about Etowah today, but we're always glad to throw 5 Points in there.
Yeah. I just wanted to know if it's still existed down there.
Yes, it does. And it actually, here in recent years, it's being used now as the little public transportation.
Sethra, it's called.
Sethra's headquarters, and it's being it looks really nice. I'm really proud of it.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that.
All righty.
Check it out.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's go back to
the dome car is called the Algonquin, and TVRM leases it from an individual, a man named Bill Harmon, who owns it. And I can't remember where Bill lives. He's coming down to ride the June 27th train. But what makes that car interesting, it's just a beautiful piece of equipment. It's 2 stories. The bottom floor is the observation area. It's got that, and it's like a really nice club car. It's even got little bedrooms in it. And then the upstairs is like you just said, Debbie, it's dome, it's glass, you really get a wonderful view of everything. But what happened is...
Are you selling fall excursion tickets already?
Yes, they're already selling fall excursion tickets. So
They will sell out.
Debbie wants 2 tickets in the dome car.
Well, that's a good... Yeah, we need to see if we can't help out on that. But in any case, the Algonquin was part of a train set in Canada. The Canadian Pacific Railroad built a train set to honor all their national parks. This one was to honor the Algonquin. They also hired artists, and a lot of them came from an artist group that I had never heard of called the Algonquin Group, and it was kind of like the Hudson River Artist Group. It was a group of artists that sort of painted the same landscapes. So the Algonquin artist that painted the mural all the way inside the Algonquin car downstairs was still alive when they decided to repaint it. And I guess I'm confused, but what happened is they put each one of these coaches had a mural. They realized how valuable and expensive these murals were several years ago, and they pulled them out and put them in an art museum and redid them, did reproductions. The only artist still living that did the original one was the artist who did the Algonquin car, and I apologize, I can't think of his name. So he said yes, he would be happy to redo his mural, but he said, if you don't mind, I'd like to do it in watercolor this time. I'm really enjoying working in watercolor, and they said that would be fine. So it's a lovely mural based on the Algonquin National Park in Canada. When Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum leased that car, they said they realized, or were told by the owner, that he would lease it to them. It says you have to insure the mural for $1 million.
Oh,
so it's a really
that
nice
little mural.
It's a really nice. Well, and it wraps
I love
around.
it.
It's an interesting coach.
So that car is where at this moment? At the Railroad Museum?
Oh no, it's on the train.
Okay,
it's regular part of the train.
Okay.
So from April through the end of November, people can ride the Algonquin, but the other coaches are interesting too. One of them is the Hummingbird, which is an original Louisville-Nashville Railroad car that's been restored. And then the other one, I forgot where it came from. One of them comes from, one of them was a Pullman car that in the late 40s or early 50s was reconfigured to become a passenger coach. You ought to get Robert Duncan. He lives in Cleveland. He's our conductor on the railroad, and Robert is the one I called when I was starting to do press releases on this special trip. I said, Robert, I'd like to say a little something about each piece of equipment, and he's the guy who told me. He's a very popular conductor because he's a good banjo player.
Oh, that's a good combination for us, a banjo player and an engineer.
Hey,
And
folks,
his day job is with the Cleveland Fire Department.
Oh,
are you
what
sure?
was his name again?
I thought he was
Robert
retired.
Duncan.
Robert
Well,
Duncan.
he may be retired, but
He's been a fireman.
he has been a fireman.
Yeah,
Oh.
but
Sounds
he's
like somebody we need to know.
No, he worked in Atlanta. He's a real nice fella, and he's sort of one of my go-to people when I call about anything about the train or the equipment. He understands about it.
Folks, you're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. If you're calling from out of town, see if I can do this, 423-614-5553. I get
It's
so
hard
many
to add those
threes
three
in
more
there.
numbers.
And
I wanted to ask Jim something. Jim, are there any documented wrecks on the O-line?
Yes, there are a few documented wrecks and some undocumented, but
Shh, I won't tell if you don't tell kind of thing. Go ahead and tell us about maybe.
well, we used to have wreckers that were assigned to certain areas, and we had what we called wreck trains. And I've been called for a week of service on a wrecker train, and what we would do is we would go from point A to point B, picking up cars that had originally been pushed off the rail because of a train wreck and just pushed over to the side. And once you got called on these wrecker crews for a week at a time, they used to have a dining car with them. And it was really something. I always loved getting called on a wrecker crew for a week because we got to eat on site, and they were not a bit chintzy about what they spent for food, and the cooks were awesome.
Tell about the marble train.
Oh yes, there is still a car laying over the side of the track that is not really visible from the train. I just happened to discover it quite by accident. I was on a high rail and just glanced over the hill, and there is this remains of a car with marble slabs, and that wreck has been there so long that a huge tree has grown up around parts of the marble slabs and parts of the car itself.
Just too heavy to get out of there?
Well, it's on about a
down too deep.
Yeah, it's probably on a 75-degree slope.
We think it's pretty old, but wrecked, because when Jim came home, he happened to have his camera. He took pictures of these slabs of marble and the tree.
Which I might mention, Jim's a photographer, and for years has made pictures after picture after picture on the railroad. Beautiful pictures.
We're making him go through some of his photographs now and telling us who's in them. He found the last train to Murphy the other day with the crew on it, and so we're kind of reminding him to tell us who some of these people are, because he's really been documenting stuff on the railroad probably since the late 1970s, and so the equipment's changed. People have come and gone and died, and
the cameras have changed too, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
Are you you've gone digital now?
Yes, I'm digital.
I'm just so frustrated at getting things printed these days. If I just try the little local drugstore, I don't like the quality. I don't know.
It comes and goes.
I tell you, Walgreens, and I'm not
I know.
pushing Walgreens.
That's okay. Go ahead.
But
we'll send them a bill.
Walgreens, to me, provides the best opportunities because they run so many specials.
Yes.
Like right now, they've got a special running 15 cents a piece for a 4x6 if you buy 75 of them.
Jim's doing a commercial.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Because see, I'm sitting here going,
Ron
and I send them a bill. I mean, it's okay.
and I often talk about that people don't print their pictures anymore.
No, they don't.
We're worried about that.
I'm worried about it too.
I'm worried about it too.
Yeah.
I bought a hard drive, external hard drive, backing up stuff on my computer. But then I keep thinking, well, what if something happens to
my external hard drive?
Do what we
died.
did. We bought two. We're going to put one here and then put one over on the shelf.
We've done the same
and Deb's got one that died, and we've got someone who's going to go do that.
We hope that they're going to be able to get my pictures off of that.
See, that's just what's scary to me about all the digital. And the Wayne Moore and the folks at the Tennessee Library and Archives say that the thing that museum archives have got to get in their head now is that this media changes.
It changes.
The digital. And he said, you've got to, about every 4 or 5 years, go back and maybe retake the pictures, copy these photographs or whatever documents, because with new media, because they said the media itself will degrade. Remember when we used just the DVDs and said, well, some of those degrade, and then you can't get stuff off.
I have to do the White Album several times now. I mean, I've got it in every format in the world.
I had done my Stevenson family history years ago, and I decided I was going to get that out, and I was going to update it, and I was going to print a book, and it was almost all done, and how easy that was going to be. And I looked and I looked and I looked, and when I found it, it was on one of those 5-inch soft floppy disks.
Yeah, you can't even.
And I could, even in the school system, couldn't find anything in the back room to run that on. So it was just kind of. I wanted to mention here that the Museum Center at 5 Points is going to do a restaurant exhibit in July.
Oh,
and what we're looking for,
I'm an expert at that.
What we're looking for, folks, or what they're looking for, and they're going to choose what goes in this, not Ron and I. But if you've got a place setting of china from the Cherokee Hotel, and it says the Cherokee Hotel on it,
how neat.
or a
What
menu,
a nice project.
or anything like that I know that Ron and I have some Dooley ice cream dishes, but they don't say Dooley's on them. But I know somebody that has some of the table and chairs
And
too.
there's another surprise we won't tell you
Pictures.
yet. Everybody's going to love.
Pictures, and your family stories. You need to go to the museum and see. I believe his name is Samuel. If not, just tell them at the front desk that your family was in the restaurant business. And they'd be glad to talk to you about that. Ron and I are going to go down. We're going to partner
idea.
with them and do something for them. Here this week, we're going to talk with them. And I know that there's folks here in town that has original signs from some of the restaurants that they're going to loan. And
the Grand Lunch, of course, the spot's still here. And the Country Kitchen, all the chicken you could eat for $1. You can't do that anymore.
There's one more thing I want to mention food-wise while you're pushing the button there, Ron, is that in this fall, there's going to be the 150th celebration of the end of the Civil War here, and they're going to have a big barbecue. And in order to participate in that barbecue, you're going to have to be a member of the Historical Society. And I think you'll get in free then, but it's kind of a fundraiser.
That's a great idea.
It's a
too.
great idea. I mean,
That's how they welcomed all the soldiers back. Was had a big barbecue back then.
And
They
we're
raised
gonna have it-
$75 back then for the barbecue.
for the whole
That was a big
for the whole thing.
barbecue.
But it's
That's a lot
on.
of
It's going to
money
be on
back
the
then.
original farm up in
Really?
Eureka Valley too. We found the farm.
And so you're going to be duplicating that original barbecue that welcomed the soldiers back.
And there's going to be reenactors and
very
music and
interesting.
everything, so everybody
Yeah.
will want to
They're
participate.
going to let a few of us Confederates come to it also. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yeah, right. I can't hardly hear you. But who was that guy that said silly vicious?
What?
I don't know.
That guy called it silly vicious. It's Sid vicious.
Oh, Sid, I didn't hear that.
I don't know who that was, Sid.
I challenge him to a banjo or guitar or anything every which way for $50. I want Ron to be the judge.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Sid.
Why don't do it for free?
Up in Ducktown or Copper Hill. Ducktown's over at Copper Hill. In Copper Hill, there's the rail yard there. Now, you have that too? That's
Yes.
Who owns all those trains sitting up out there?
Well,
And cars.
The cars, they're being leased. Those are Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum is leasing them. Now, we went through a period after the downturn in the economy, after 2008, when we used the yard to sell storage space to major railroad companies and power companies that needed to store, particularly TVA. It was mainly TVA stored their cars for them.
There you go.
And we generated revenue. But when the economy picked up, people need those cars now. So those are probably queued up in case there's another Calshine shipment.
Okay. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, sir. I know I can't keep calling in there. This is Tony Neely. I was there on the Cherokee, the motel there, and Buddy Cope had the restaurant down underneath there, Cope Restaurant,
Yeah.
and he had it for several years there, and he helped feed the people that stayed there, the elderly people,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a good thing that he done for them,
Sure was, wasn't it?
for the Cleveland area.
Yeah. Of course,
I heard you just talking about the restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people now call it the Summit, but that was originally a Cherokee. That was built in 1925, I think. And actually, the local businessmen in Cleveland and the Chamber of Commerce built that because they needed a place for people to come into town, and then they later sold it out to
What about that?
private. But it's actually built by the city.
I had no idea.
Thank you for listening and thank you for calling.
Yes,
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The radio station broadcast for the first time from there too. I don't know if it was BAC or CLE. Go ahead, Jim.
I think there's one thing that you all would find quite interesting. If you could get Sandy and Linda to tell you about their midnight trip on the Old Line Railroad.
They just looked at each other and gave him a mean look.
So go ahead there. Tell
Let's
us.
hear about that midnight train to Georgia. Well, not exactly.
Now, was the moonshine involved in this
No,
one?
no moonshine.
We wish there had
we
been
wish.
moonshine involved.
It was kudzu that was involved.
What happened is the Tennessee Overhill had just bought
Hold
the
on a second.
line.
Hold on. Let me get this call, then
Every
we'll get
time,
back to you.
Linda, you're the magic person today. Every time
Go
you start
ahead, caller,
talking,
you're
okay,
live.
Well, I
That's
talk
okay.
a
Go
lot, so
ahead.
that'd be-
I really isn't out there, Ron, working in the garden, but now that guy that's talking about railroads, does he remember the old railroad that went up the Conasauga River?
Yes.
Went up to the other side of it there, opposite of...
Jim, do you remember the old railroad that went up beside the Conasauga River?
I don't remember that one, but
that was just the lumber company, actually.
Right.
Yeah, the lumber company ran.
That's how the lumber company got the lumber down to the railroad.
That's what we would. That's what we called a spur track.
Right, like the one that ran to the dam.
Called an industrial spur.
And it was actually, I think, a different scale, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was for Shea engines.
Yeah, Shea
It's called a narrow gauge.
Right, narrow gauge.
Versus a standard gauge.
I've heard there's a few of the rails left in place. I don't know. Thanks, Sid.
Okay, now tell us your story there.
Well, the Tennessee Overhill had just bought the railroad, and it had been hard to get on it to even look at, what we needed to do or not to do. We didn't have an operator yet. We didn't really have a maintenance crew in place yet. But
all you had was faith.
All we had was faith. But Jim had met a buddy down in Atlanta working on the railroad that had one of these little motor cars. And he was just dying to come up and get on it. Jim said, we ought to do that because it'll give us a chance to get a look at it. And also, it's at the area around the loop especially. And he said, it wouldn't hurt maybe to make a few friends with CSX folks down in Atlanta. We might need some assistance at some point. So we're supposed to meet him up at Copper Hill. Well, since he's probably not listening to this, I'll just tell you, he brought some city slicker with him from Atlanta that just really wanted to be a railroader, but I don't believe he'd ever done that sort of thing before. Anyway, we got on this motor car, and he's pulling a thing behind it that Sandy and I are sitting on in lawn chairs. So the first thing that happens is we start running into trees all over the line. So he'd get out, with his chainsaw, and Jim had to correct him a time or two. Said, "Son, you don't walk with the chainsaw running. We're gonna." So we cut a few trees. So everything is getting much later, and everything has gotten dark. By the time we get to the loop, kudzu had completely taken over the track, and this car would not go through it. The car was churning. The wheels were churning, grinding up those kudzu leaves, and it was slick. So we get off the back of the stuff, and we're walking out in front of this car, taking our hands, and it's up waist high, throwing this stuff off in the summer. Well, the man from Atlanta, the city,
walking on that loop.
Well, the city man. Well, we weren't on the trestle part.
Oh, okay.
But the city guy was scared to death. The little railroad guy wasn't, and Jim wasn't. I was nervous, and I said to Jim, Jim, I'm a little concerned about the snakes. And he just fired a shot at me and looked at me, and he said, you get back on the car, you and Sandy, and sit up there and don't say anything else. There are no snakes. I said, but the snake. He said, no, shut up. There are no snakes, Linda. The snakes are denned up asleep because they have more sense than we do. Get on the thing and don't say anything else about snakes. So we got the kudzu off, and we finally get down to the bottom of that grade after the loop, and we run into a tree that is not possible to cut with that chainsaw wasn't big enough. So then the problem becomes, how do we back up the mountain? So we back so far up, and Jim says, bless his heart, I'm glad we had somebody there that had some sense. He said, we're going to make a switch to turn this thing around. And they got off and prized up. What did y'all do with a tool rail? And we turned the thing around. To get to that point, they made Sandy sit on the edge of the thing with a flashlight and a lantern to try to get up there. And then she held the lantern for them to make this switch. And when we got the thing turned around, Jim pulled the rail back and put the line back together. The moon's out, it's a lovely night, and the little guy says to me, said, Miss Caldwell, it just doesn't get any better than this. He said, here it is, midnight, we're on the loop with the full moon. And I said, son, I am so over this trip. And finally, we got back about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and we start through the Ocoee Gorge, and a policeman stopped us. And before he could even get to the car, Jim just jumped out of the car and met him back there. He was in no mood to do anything at that point. But I said, what about the poor little man from Atlanta that's never... Jim said, well, he wanted him some railroading, and he got him some tonight. He got him some railroad. He said he didn't think he was going to have to build a switch. But we still laugh about it, but it wasn't probably the most sensible
thing
to
no.
do.
Well,
That'd been a pretty good hike out of there, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, I was pretty nervous, to be honest. About 1 o'clock in the morning, I thought this is just going sideways.
Now, Jim, was you lying to her about the snakes being denned up?
Well, like I said, they were a lot smarter than we were. And this gentleman that she's talking about from Atlanta was getting a wee bit nervous every time somebody said something about a snake. So we didn't need to make matters worse. But they were smarter than us.
Yes, all the noise.
And there are quite a few snakes up in that area.
Yeah.
now, do you ever? I go back to this railroad.
Thank
car.
God for kudzu, right?
Pardon?
Thank God for kudzu.
No.
Oh man, what a
Gosh.
evil disease! I mean,
Oh,
evil.
it's about like a disease.
Well,
isn't
I
it?
have a theory about kudzu.
What's
that?
that?
We have world hunger. But I think that if we took kudzu and billy goats, we could feed the world, because goats love kudzu, and kudzu grows overnight, and goats reproduce overnight. So
What a combination!
you've got a food source for a food source that could feed the world.
Or find all those drunks up there and pour Jack Daniels on it, and they'd eat it up, right?
There you go.
That's
Either way, we get rid of the kudzu, right?
That's right.
Well, we have a friend here in Cleveland who makes gasoline, ethanol out of kudzu.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's called kudzenol.
It's kind of
And,
the same,
and-
like a steel process.
Well, basically, it's moonshine. I mean, anything plant that you distill, that's what he does
Well,
to distill it.
well, sure, I guess
and
that's true.
before he can sell it, he has to pour some kind of little motor oil in it to make it
smell funny.
Yeah.
But you could actually drink it. I haven't tried any of the kudzu moonshine or thing, and but I started to say is, man, could you think harvesting kudzu, we could end the gas problems of the world? It wouldn't go up 25 cents in a week like it has this last week here. So
Someone, once again, tell everybody how you would I know that the special train is full, but for the regular trains, how do you purchase tickets?
There's two ways you can purchase tickets. You can go to the ticket office at the Etowah Depot and walk in there and hand her a check or cash or a credit card, or you can call the Etowah ticket office at 423-263-7840, and she can take your credit card over the telephone and hold your tickets and let you pick them up there. Also, you can actually purchase them online through Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum's website and do your credit card online too.
And if you want you can call that number and they will mail you a schedule, or you can go on the internet.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Hey, go ahead, caller.
Ronnie,
Yeah.
I certainly enjoyed this today, but I thought the story that Deb said about the veteran,
Uh-huh.
I thought that was so nice. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to call and let you know I have tried it several times, so I finally got you, little boy.
There you go. We'll play you a song when we go off.
Oh, yeah. I'd forgotten about that. Because
Oh, I never forget about that.
Saturday before he went off in the air. Someone played it over the radio early that morning.
There you go.
I try to every week.
For that story about the veterans, because I dearly love it, because in my immediate family we had 18 in service. So I'll talk with you later and have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye, dear.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Sweet. I just thought that worked out really well this week, because I figured it'd take me a few days to find a family. It just took a few minutes because my friends put it out.
That was a wonderful service.
And that was, and
that's the nice thing about social media now.
Oh, yes.
And his daughter he's still around, of course, but his daughter, I think, is going to be really excited to have that picture.
Well, I put on Facebook that we were looking for some better pictures of Sid Garwood, who was sort of an iconic locomotive engineer. He brought the first train into Etowah, and he had started out working on the M&NG in North Georgia. Started out throwing wood in a wood-fired steam engine. But I just put it on Facebook, and all of a sudden I got a hit from my Facebook friend in Florida that used to work in the her sister-in-law used to work in the depot, and it turns out she's a descendant of Sid Garwood. She sent me
There
a
you
good
go.
black and white, but when the really interesting thing happened, about 3 days later, I got up at 6:30 in the morning, got a cup of coffee, went in and looked at my email, and there was an email from Sid Garwood. And when I opened it up, he said, I'm I believe he said a grandchild of Sid Garwood. I live in Memphis. I'm a corporate plane pilot. I'll send you my picture, and it's the same picture, but it's been hand colorized. It is a
wonderful.
stunning photograph. I told him, I said, it almost took my breath when you said it.
We're looking, I know you guys, if anybody has railroad photos or
I tell you something we'd love to find, because the old line did not always belong to the L&N. It was first an AK&N and an M&NG. We would give anything if we could find anything with M&NG Railroad or A&K on it. AK&N, I'm sorry, AK&N Railroad.
That was some of those little independent railroads, you think?
Well,
Yes,
Atlanta,
basically.
well, yeah, but, we're about out of time.
That's okay. Go ahead.
There's a kind of an interesting story. You mentioned these little railroads that cropped up.
Yeah.
There was a lot of scamming and speculating going on.
Oh, yeah.
In the in that period when people were building railroads, and one of them was happening right here. When the Knoxville Southern and Marietta and North Georgia were trying to buy up property to create this line, the original intention was the main line would go to Murphy, North Carolina, and there would be a spur into Ducktown. Well, when they got to Murphy and tried to buy up property, they ran into a roadblock. There were people who wouldn't sell property. I had always heard that it was Dr. Hitchcock at Murphy that he refused to sell the property. But when you go back and look at Robert Barkley's book, Robert Barkley really had the real story. Turns out Dr. Hitchcock had been gone from Murphy for 10 years, was living in San Francisco, but what happened was this phony railroad created as a scam, and it was the Chattanooga, Cleveland, and Murphy. Chattanooga, Cleveland, and Murphy Railroad. They went in and bought up land options for a railroad that was never going to be. Their intention was to turn around and sell those options to M&NG and not at a high price. Well, by the time the residents caught on, George Eager, that railroad builder, was so mad by then it was over. And they said that his last visit to Murphy, North Carolina, he turned in the courthouse and he said, "Damn Murphy, henceforth and from now on my hand is against everything in Murphy." And they built a branch line to Murphy instead. But that came out of a sort of a scam.
Now, is that Ducktown during Ross time? Is that the Wright Barkley book?
No, we use that one. That's a great book, too. The one that's really good on railroad is The Railroad Comes to Ducktown by Robert Barkley.
Okay, you think that's at the Ducktown Museum?
It is.
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay, I know that the other one, Ducktown during Ross time, they're down to their last box of those.
Thank God the
And
Tennessee
I tried.
got one, and I've got one.
I tried to order one online, and they said sure. And then they came back and said no, we don't have it. And so if you want those Barkley books, I find them to be very accurate and very interesting.
I do too.
And that would be good to have. I want you guys to come back sometime because I want to go back to that moment when you realized you had a railroad tracks and you had no train. Okay. And the folks that you had to get out of your community that were the old railroad guys that helped you. And I'm sure that's a 2-hour show. And so please plan to come back sometime.
So you need movies, you need the original documents from the old, if anybody got a copy of letterhead or anything from those old railroads.
Sure, a lantern, anything that's got AK and N. We've got a lot of
locks.
Yeah, locks. We've got a lot
Switch
time
locks.
Yeah,
timetables, passes. We've got a lot of L&N stuff, but we would just love to have a few things from the AK
we need
and
to
N
check
and
with
the M&NG.
Charlie because I know he has lots of those locks, and he had the Tennessee Electric Power Company, so he's been up in that area.
And any family photos that you may have about that, it's always good. And if you
railroad houses,
anything, stories is good.
Family stories.
And we're looking for Ducktown. We're looking for old movies.
Now, when we say old movies, right now we're wanting 1950s movies.
Sure, that's some great stuff.
And 40s movies. So if you know of any, we need them.
Our story is not about the mining in Ducktown. It's about the people up on top of the ground.
That's what Debbie said.
And it's basically we want to show life was just the same there as it was anywhere else in the world, except they didn't have any grass or dirt.
And they had more money.
And had a lot of money. But birthday parties and the Red Hills behind it, that's what I want to see. They played baseball and softball and
They
they didn't have a
carried
lot of
38.
grass.
Well, they
Yeah,
did it, but well, the one story that Ron and I both just chuckle every time we hear the little guy say it. We interviewed a Mr. Brown. He's 90 years old, and I was asking him about, well, I don't know what the topic was, but he finally says, well, the only people that had money in Ducktown were the preachers and the moonshiners. And I love it. Folks, we'll see. Thank you so much.
Next
Thank you.
week, Deb, is the murder of Israel Smith, Sheriff Israel Smith.
And with Chip Bryant.
Yeah, every week we always tell everybody to do like these ladies done, and this gentleman here is you got to get your pictures out from the back of the closet, out from under the bed, out of the shoe boxes. Get someone to take a white piece of white label, write who's on that picture, and stick it on there. Because if you don't, when someone passes away, folks, history dies with us every day. So get those out. Interview your grandmas, your grandmothers, your aunts, your uncles, your neighbors. You got to do that. Save those pictures. Share them with people. You'll never know what that picture might mean to some other person. And always, everyone will remember Pearl Harbor, but
will they remember Aunt Pearl?
I don't know if they will or not. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye-bye.
Where'd the old town go? They moved it all north of here in the shopping mall.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.